Hello, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast. Great to have you with me today. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is your first time, welcome. You're back again. I hope you really enjoyed this interview. It was amazing. I really enjoyed my conversation. So this is episode 1164. All the show notes can be found at thehiddenwhy.com. And my interview today is with Parul Somani. She's an MIT and Harvard Business School graduate, cancer survivor speaker, and the author of The Path of Least Regret. What an incredible conversation. I love this idea of regret. Now, I've always talked about living life with no regrets. It's kind of impossible, right? We're always going to have some level of regrets. And that's what Parul talks about in our interview today. It's really about creating more intentional living. And that's really what we delve into today. She outlines her five-phase framework around living life with least regret. And it's a beautiful framework. I really loved it. And particularly we delved into awareness, which is the first phase of her framework. And so we delved right into that deep. We talk about values, how to create more intentional living. And really it's to guide better decisions, because sometimes decisions aren't easy, but if we guide it from intentionality with agency, we're likely going to make decisions that lead to less regret. And that's what it's all about. So really interesting conversation. I loved it. Could have kept talking with Parul for a while. She is eloquent in how she speaks, and I think it makes a lot of sense. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as well. Check it out at thehiddenwhy.com, episode 1164. She's got the book out there as well. Links to her are in the show notes. So make sure you check it out. Make sure you thank her for coming on the show if you've enjoyed it. And reach out to us, as always, here at thehiddenwhy.com. And would love to chat more with you as well. Have a great day and enjoy this interview. Parul, welcome to the Hidden Why podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Great to have you here. Whereabouts are you based?
I'm based in the Bay Area in California.
Okay, nice. Good weather over there at the moment? Not too hot?
Yes. Sunny, warm, comfortable. Yes, we're a little bit spoiled.
Yeah, nice. Beautiful. Well, welcome to the show. Really interested in your work, and you've written a book, which I love this topic, The Path of Least Regret. So I really want to delve into that today with you. I suppose what got you to, I mean, you got a backstory, and I know a bit of your backstory, but for the audience benefit, what got you to writing this book? Why is this important to you?
At the most fundamental, it was important to me to write the book because through life's ups and downs, I've realized we're never actually taught how to make decisions. And it's all of the micro and macro choices that we make in our life that really shape our fulfillment, our success, our peace of mind. And yet something that's just so fundamental to our well-being is never anything we're actually effectively or explicitly taught how to navigate. And it was through my experiences that I felt like I was deconstructing what type of mindset, strategies, frameworks, approaches to decision making have worked for me in the past and haven't worked for me in the past, and what it is that I needed. And over the years have developed that into this more science-backed framework. And it was important to me to share it with others to help them make the most of their one wild and precious life as well.
So you created this framework around the path of least regret based on your own experience of unpacking that and going, okay, well, because you went through a fairly traumatic experience after childbirth.
Yeah, that's right. So, my my specific point of inspiration for the path of least regret, not just in the fleshed out way it is in the content of the book, but even just as a premise and like a phrase and a decision making lens, really came to mind for me in July of 2014. And it was, a month earlier, or a few weeks earlier, rather, I had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of breast cancer when I was 31 years old and holding my newborn baby, still recovering from my C-section. And there was just a lot of uncertainty and fear and every type of emotion that you can imagine being faced with such a blindsiding diagnosis like that.
Yeah.
But in the weeks that followed, I was really just relying on my old decision making framework, which was to dive into the data and do research and look for the answer, in this case, what treatment plan I should choose, looking for that in the analysis.
Yeah.
And I quickly realized that I would always be able to ask for additional, second and third opinions from doctors. I could always find more studies to look at. There was always going to be more and more data, but the answer of what was the right treatment choice for me, and by right, I mean there was no guaranteed outcome either way. There was no certainty that if you do this path, you will have a long life and you will also have a healthy life with minimal toxic side effects. And so the question no longer became what is the choice that has certainty on the other side, but what is the choice that has the like that has the most peace of mind on the other side. That is the regret I could most live with, even if the outcome I want isn't achieved.
Okay.
And it was when I was exploring these treatment options, realizing there was no easy answer. The narrative that went in my mind was there's no path of least resistance. So, what is my path of least regret?
Okay. Interesting. So that's
And
sort of what the path of least, the framework entails is because
so
you talk
that
about
was
decision making and resilience and agency and owning the decision, making decisions.
absolutely, absolutely. So, that story is really just the genesis of the lens of looking at decision making, not just in this data driven way, but in this values aligned way. So when I talk
Mm,
about the path of least regret, for me, it's not just about taking the safe option or trying to find the certain outcome, but it's more around unpacking what is it that I'm solving for? What is it that most aligns with my values and priorities and is the intentional and thoughtful approach to the problem? And based on everything that I can know, including the data that I can collect, but also looking inward and seeing what are my emotions telling me and using those inputs as data as well, which path forward is either an option presented to me or is one that I could even craft for myself that will be most value aligned going forward. So that even if what I'm hoping for doesn't work out in the future, when I look back to this point in time, this crossroad that I'm at, did I at least make the most thoughtful and intentional and aligned decision that I could at the time?
yeah. Yeah. Okay.
But over the years, what I've also realized and what I've fleshed out in The Path of Least Regret as a book, which is now also like a 5-phase framework that I share in the book, that the path of least regret is not just the moment you're at a decision point. It's actually about how do you navigate that entire roller coaster of emotions that happens when you're faced with any type of uncertainty or change or hard choice where you're feeling stuck. And
Mm,
that emotional roller coaster begins much earlier than the decision point when you actually are first just facing the discomfort of it all. And so in the 5-phase framework, what I'm actually doing is one, giving readers and sharing with others a language and a framework for how to even think about what that emotional roller coaster is. And so you can understand what is a normal journey that we all traverse. And then in each of those phases, how can you approach them most effectively so that you are honoring your emotions and recognizing the sort of human side to all of us, but also allowing yourself to move forward in a way that best serves you.
mm. Were you a data analyst in your previous career? Like,
So my background is in business. I was an electrical engineering and computer science major from MIT. So definitely a very like analytical, data-driven approach to thinking and problem solving. And then my career was in management consulting. I have my MBA from business school, and I've led teams at different tech startups in Silicon Valley here in California. And so, when I think about decision making and the fact that we're never taught how to do it, it's usually something that we just develop through our schooling or develop through the profession that we're in. And so for me, that approach to decision making had always been very logical and structured and data oriented, which, had its benefits and it definitely has its place. But there was never a discussion about the human centeredness of decision making and the emotions that are actively at play for all of the decisions that matter most to us, both in life and in leadership.
Wow, interesting. Is it something you think we should be teaching at schools more thoroughly?
Absolutely. I have two daughters who are now both in middle school. Actually, one's about to start high school. And what I've realized over these many years since first thinking about the path of least regret in 2014, it came to me in a time of a health situation, a health diagnosis, a health crisis.
Yeah.
And yet it's also been relevant over the years in so many different contexts, and not just in my own life, like in career or parenting or caregiving, or in the lives of other leaders and people that I've worked with and coached, but even my own children, right? Even kids are facing their own setbacks and crossroads and hard choices and needing guidance on how to unpack defining, what it is that they're optimizing for in this grade or in this experience or in this chapter of their lives. And so with the path of least regret framework, I am not giving anyone answers on what they should or should not do. I'm giving a language and a framework and the set of introspective and reflective questions that one can explore and answer for themselves so that they can define and pursue the path of least regret that is most true for them.
Love this. Love this. I want to jump into these 5 phases, if that's okay. One thing that comes to mind right now is a mentor of mine. He always says paralysis by overanalysis, which I love because sometimes we have this tendency to overanalyze everything and then we don't get any closer to making the right decision. But at the same time, I also think in this day and age, we're so quick to make the easiest option. Like, what's the easiest, comfortable option rather than making a more intentional, value-driven decision moving forward. So it's kind of that, rock between a hard place. Do you make the easy decision or do you really go into analyzing things more thoroughly? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're referring to as there being almost sort of two ends of the spectrum of decision making that people often tend to fall into. And I think it's when we end in one end or the other that regret is more likely to thrive, right? Either it's because we've kind of rushed into a decision. We're just looking for we're trying to make the choice quickly, either because it's the easiest one or it's the lowest hanging fruit option, or it feels like the safest or whatever, or we just want to rush to action. And we don't necessarily take that mindful pause to think it through and reflect on, what are all the considerations? How do we actually feel about the trade-offs? And so that's the more rushed version. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have the person who's more paralyzed by the idea of making a decision. And as you're framing it, there's analysis paralysis, there's mental roadblocks that are holding them back. They're continuing to find more and more data or look for the answer in data because they're seeking certainty, which they're unlikely to find. And for that, cohort, the paralysis and that indecision actually becomes a decision because they may have spent so much time trying to think it through or choose the perfect answer that the opportunity passes by. And that the lack of action itself becomes this decision. And so what is ideal is to find that more moderate approach, the balance of taking the mindful pause, being introspective, reflecting on the data that you can collect, the data that your own emotions are telling you, and factoring that into a thoughtful choice, but not rushing into action nor getting so paralyzed by it.
Yeah.
So in the Path of Least Regret framework, that's actually one of the phases that I talk about is how do you, the importance of identifying your mental roadblocks, what is preventing you from like moving forward, and how can you overcome them.
Yeah.
And some of those mental roadblocks might be things like fear or just that analysis paralysis, but there's usually like a double click within that of like you're paralyzed by the analysis, but what else is happening that is preventing you from just like making a call.
Making a call. Do you mind sharing the 5 phases with us today?
Of course,
That's
yeah.
right.
So first, what I do is I introduce the 5 phases that I call the emotional journey of change and decision making.
Yeah.
And if you can think of it as, it's like how your mental well-being is fluctuating over time. And this could be due to an acute change or driver of uncertainty, like a layoff or a diagnosis, like this sudden curveball, or it could be driven more by inertia, right? That just over the steady course of time, a job you're in is no longer serving you, or a relationship is no longer serving you. And in that first phase is, so the 5 phases, first of all, and then I can dive into each one. There's awareness, processing, exploration, decision, and adaptation. And
awareness, processing,
exploration, decision, and adaptation.
Okay.
And in the awareness phase is where you are having that plummet of your mental well-being, where it's this realization that a sudden change has occurred, or this inertia is finally hitting a tipping point that you need to trigger a change. And that's where all of the uncomfortable emotions happen. And that's where it's important to process, like to honor them and give yourself permission to feel. And yet you also don't want to be bogged down by them. You don't want to end up in a spiral where you're just ruminating on what's happened. And so in the processing phase is where it's important to start actually defining those mental roadblocks and working to overcome them. And only when you're of the kind of mindset that, it's not like you have just checked some box that like, okay, I've identified my mental roadblocks and now I've overcome them. That's obviously ongoing work that happens. But we do reach a point where we feel ready to move forward, that we realize that continuing to focus on the thing that's happened is no longer serving us. But to be able to define, which path forward you want to take, you have to know where you're trying to get to. And so the exploration phase is really about defining your North Star and identifying what is going to guide your decision making. What is it that you're valuing right now? What is it that you're prioritizing right now? And how does that align with this more meta North Star? Then in the decision phase is where you're actually at the crossroads and choosing, is it option A or is it option B? Or you're like crafting your own option for the change it is that you want to make, or the choice it is that you want to make. And then adaptation is a really important phase afterwards, to recognize that this is not just a linear process that we just traverse and are done. We are constantly changing. Our priorities may change in different seasons of our life. Other curveballs might come our way, and what we once might have defined as our path of least regret, may look different in a different chapter of our lives. And so giving ourselves that permission to take a detour, to take a change of course, to realign ourselves as we change, is what the adaptation phase is really about, which is actually realizing that this is a cyclical process that we continue to
I was going to say, so in the adaptation phase, you might find yourself going back through from the top with awareness and exploration, all those things again.
Absolutely. And I mean, the reality is I frame it as if it's this like linear process that we go through, but the reality is that depending on the situation and the magnitude of the emotions involved, we might jump from one phase, ahead and then back, and like emotions come in waves, right? So there might be times where we think that we're working on overcoming our mental roadblocks and we're ready to move forward, and we're working on looking ahead, and then we just have that bad day, we have that bad week where the emotions come back and we feel like bogged down by our mental roadblocks again. And so recognizing that that these things happen in waves, but to be able to recognize the phase that you're in and then recognize what strategies and mindsets are going to be most effective in helping you move through that phase is what the path of least regret is about equipping people with.
Do you find like in the once you've made a decision in the adaptation stage, you might have these thoughts of almost regret, like, geez, was this the right decision? And these self-doubts about that? Or do you think through this process, one would be more confident that, you know what, I've made this decision, I'm owning it, and I'm going to move forward without this, because it's about not having regret, right? Like the path of least regret.
It's an important question, because I would actually say the answer is yes to both possibilities, right? There's a reason why the book is not called The Path of No Regret.
Right.
What I'm actually trying to communicate is not that we can or should lead these like no regret lives, because I think it's actually very human to have regret. And the reason is because we can't control outcomes. We still might have regret on how things turned out because there was some curveball we didn't expect, or something else that influenced the outcome that we couldn't have controlled. We might still have that lingering what if. But what we can do to minimize that regret and to optimize our peace of mind is knowing that we made a very intentional and thoughtful approach to what we could control in the decision-making process. And so in the adaptation phase or in some future state, to your question of might we have regret? Yes, we might. Yeah. But if we go through the path of least regret approach to moving through those choices, to moving through those changes, then at least we can lean on the reassurance that comes from knowing if I were rewinding back in time and needing to make that decision again, that I wouldn't have made a different decision knowing what I knew at the time.
Yeah, yeah.
And that I had made the best decision that I could with that information that I had back then. And so while it might not eliminate all regret, it will hopefully help minimize it and comfort those when questioning.
Yeah, I like the peace of mind thing. I think makes a lot of sense. We've talked about it a little bit here, but intentional, I suppose having that awareness and intentional processing. How do we create better intention and become more intentional in our decision making?
Yeah. So this is where I talk about the importance of mindful pauses in the lives that we live now and just how they're structured. They're so busy and so easily filled, either with meetings or events or places we need to go to, or even in those moments where we might have a spare few minutes, we're waiting in line. We don't just allow ourselves to pause, to like look around ourselves, be present, like reflect on our day. We grab our phones and distract ourselves with something, right? And so to clarify your intentions or to create space for that type of intentionality, it requires creating this time in your day where you can actually allow your mind to wander. And that can happen in these little micro doses, like you're washing the dishes, letting your mind wander, you're standing in line and refusing to allow yourself to be distracted by your phone, but actually just letting your mind reflect on the day or the week or a situation you're experiencing. Or maybe it's more scheduled in nature. You're going on a walk and letting your mind just operate, right? Because I think what we fail to put enough value into is that when our mind is wandering, when we're quote unquote bored or not actually doing anything, that is when our brain is actually connecting all sorts of dots behind, like in the back end, right? And that's where moments like epiphanies can happen or realizations can happen, if we create the space for them. Yeah. And then of course there's like the much more structured way of doing things, like an annual life audit where, like my husband's and my anniversary, for example, is at the end of December. So it just serves as this perfect time to use our anniversary as a catalyst for a life audit as we're going into the new year. And it's like it's almost like a scheduled meeting, right? Where it's like, okay, let's talk about our relationship as a couple, our family, our relationship with the kids, with our parents, with our friends. How do we feel about how are things going? What's our intention for the year ahead? And, at the end of the next year, when we look back, what do we want to feel about that category? What do we want to have experienced? And that type of intention setting can be that systematized in nature. But what works for different people just varies. And so it's really about recognizing for yourself, like, do you want to do an individual life audit, around your birthday each year? Is that type of structured approach helpful for you? Are you more social in nature and you want to have a personal board of advisors that you are a group of friends that you maybe have a monthly call with where you touch base on your intentions for your personal life or your professional life or whatever that category is for the year, and use them as a sounding board. There's just a variety of ways. I share many
different
of them
tools,
in the book. Because what tool is most effective just depends on each person.
I really admire that you and your husband sit down and do that, I guess, vision exploration and analysis of your life. That's amazing. Like, did you guys find that was something that was hard to get into, or is it both just in your nature to have these conversations? Like, how did that unfold?
Well, I think it was we've been married 20 years now, and it was not something that we were doing like right from the get-go, right? It was like just life was just sort of happening. And we had young kids. It was, it's not like we had all these like regular date nights or anything like that. And we were just feeling like we're not creating the time that we need to just make sure life is not just happening to us and that we're actually getting what we want from it, especially, as our children are getting older, as our parents are getting older, as our careers are changing shape. Like, are we on the same page about them? Are we actually approaching them with intention? And so the life family audit approach was something that just worked for us because we're both like business trained people. Working in Excel was very comfortable for us, to make a spreadsheet on this. So for us, it's been very helpful. I think early on, we maybe tried to over systematize it because we were like, okay, now we're going to have quarterly check-ins and like see how we're tracking against, our intention setting. And that didn't end up necessarily following through in that level of detail.
A little bit of business, but not too business. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. Like allow the fluidity that is needed with life.
Yeah.
But even just taking that moment, even if it's like once a year in this like official way to audit the things that are important to you. And sometimes the answer might be, okay, this category, it's going well, like status quo, just carry on, right? We don't need to like change anything. But then another category might be like, okay, there's this like really big thing that we need to be thinking about. Like maybe it's our parents are aging and living far away from us. Are we having the conversations we need to be having around how we're going to take care of them as they get older, right? It's just like creating that space for thinking ahead so that you have the time and bandwidth and energy to plan accordingly at a time, before it's kind of more thrown on you more urgently.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it came to my mind recently through some mentoring that I've received, and it was just like as an individual, like look at your life as a whole, right? We're just so short-term focused and so in the moment, we don't take the time to actually go, where do I want to be in 5 years, 10 years? And it might seem too far out, and I know through experience that I can't plan anything for 10 years with certainty, but I can have an idea of what I want it to look like, and that'll help me unpack it to what I need to do in the next 3 months or the next month or the next day, and
That's
create that
exactly right.
intentionality behind it. So I really love that. I think that's very valuable. With your own level of awareness, you talked about, things like washing the dishes and letting your mind wander. We just don't do this often enough, and I'm guilty, but I'm quite aware of it as well. But the phones in our hands and people taking the phone to the toilet with them, which is an ideal mind for your mind to wander,
Yeah,
but instead we're
absolutely.
scrolling or doing something like that. Is there any particular practices that you've found really beneficial in your own personal life that have allowed you to create more time for that? Whether it's a mindfulness session or some rules around what you like, boundaries?
Yeah. So, one thing that my husband and I have actually started over the past, I would say maybe year or so, is trying to take walks around the neighborhood together. I feel like we're actually just becoming like our parents, but the act of going out for a walk together has been wonderful. And whether it's together or whether it's like just someone doing it on their own, it's a lovely time to allow your mind to wander. One obviously is the benefit of the exercise and fitness benefit that comes with it, but you're also not going to like walk around the neighborhood like with your phone in front of your face,
I don't know. I
ideally,
see
right?
it.
Well, something, yeah, it's not maybe the safest move to do, but there's so many studies that prove the benefit of just walking in nature
Yeah.
and like being present in that moment. And so if it's actually scheduling time for yourself like that,
Hmm.
again, it depends on each person and what works for them. But I'm the type of person who blindly follows my calendar. And so if something is blocked on my calendar to do, then it's more likely to happen. And so
Yeah. That's smart.
if it's blocking that walk in nature, if it's taking that meeting that is a one-on-one conversation, does it really have to be like sitting down in an office, or can you, even if you're in person, go on a walk together? If it's a virtual meeting, does it actually have to be a Zoom sit down and we look at each other conversation, or could it be audio only and you go for a walk while you're on the conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like being just kind of questioning how you're like living your day to day and what could possibly change to allow for a change in habits that might actually create more space for either being present or being out and about, or allowing introspection and reflection,
Hmm.
even if it's blocking time on your calendar to be like reflection time, right? And then that's where you think about, okay, what do I want in this week ahead? At the end of the week, how do I want to feel about like what all I might have experienced or accomplished, and working backwards from there, what does that mean for how I plan the week ahead to make sure all of that gets done? And it's not necessarily just like work that's checked off, but it's like, maybe I want to make sure I see this group of friends. Maybe it's I want to make sure I organize a dinner and actually interact with the people that re-energize me. Um,
Yeah.
but I need to be intentional about it, because otherwise life will just get in the way.
I love that calendar blocking. I think that's really important. And for not just work related things like reflection time and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
Planning and
But
yeah, you go.
sorry, just on that, on the question that you had answered, though, I think even just recognizing that we're not allowing our mind to wander enough
Hmm.
is such an important part of actually then making sure it happens, right?
Yeah.
So do I have a special strategy for like not taking my phone into the restroom? No, other than just remembering that it's like why it's important that I don't do it, right? Like just even being able to observe your behaviors and recognize, okay, which ones are serving me and which ones aren't, versus being on uh, kind of like a auto automatic cycle or whatever, where we're just used to doing something. So we're like, oh, I carry my phone everywhere I go, so let me just take it into the bathroom with me. Or, I'm at a stoplight. Okay, let me like check my messages while I wait, right? Like
Yeah.
there's certain behaviors a lot of us just do automatically, but being able to, through this conversation, hopefully listeners recognize like why that might not be serving them, and that actually keeping the phone where it is, actually like not feeling like you have to carry it around the house with you at all the times, and it can be sitting on a counter somewhere, and you can be allowing your mind to wander somewhere else, is actually beneficial to you. Then hopefully that awareness itself will be a tactic that helps people create that space for themselves a bit more.
I think if you can get to that point where you're walking out the door and you're going, shit, my phone's not with me, like in this day and age, you're doing something right around that piece of awareness that your phone doesn't rule your life. Um,
Yeah.
Really, really, that's what, yeah. So yeah, having that mindfulness, I mean, that's little decisions, right? Like, obviously we do a lot of things without consideration or conscious thought, like taking the phone with us everywhere. But really making a decision of, hey, I don't need my phone beside my bed at night, or I don't need to take my phone with me to the toilet, whatever it might be. It's little micro decisions, but it comes from this overall intentionality and awareness that we've just talked about. Really important.
Yeah.
What do you like?
Or even thinking that, okay, I don't need my phone on the table when I'm at a restaurant with a group of friends,
Yeah.
right? Like is it really that important? Like, sometimes there might be, right? Like sometimes there's a concern that like a child might be calling or something, and there's a reason. But just making sure you're being intentional about like, okay, do I need to have this out or do I not? Because if I don't and I can put it away, you're likely to be that much more present at the dinner and in the
Mm, mm.
company of the people that you're with, because there's not any temptation to just like check it simply because it's there. Uh, and so just really being questioning of why we do what we do, how is it serving us? And if we were to do it a little bit differently, would that potentially actually serve us better when it comes to being present, being introspective, being engaged with the things that actually energize us and help us build our resilience and lead these more fulfilling lives.
I find that we've made like, exceptions around, phone use, for example. Let's go there. That, I need the phone because what happens if someone needs to contact me? And I've been thinking about that recently and going, well, hang on, we never had a phone when I was growing up. And, if I needed to contact mum or dad for some reason, it was the home phone. And if they weren't home or near it, they wouldn't hear from me. And I had to figure things out. So as a child, I was benefiting from being able to make some better decisions on my own without having that instant connection and answer from my parents. And for my parents, it
Yeah.
was good too. Like it was liberating. So sometimes I think, you again, just think about those things and is it really that necessary? And the problem with the phone is, as we know, if it's next to you and it's there because just in case someone needs to call me, but then suddenly you're scrolling through social media or whatever unnecessarily.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, I was a very bored person. Like I'm always bored, so I like to be active. And this level for me, it made me mean that I'm so active that I just always want to be doing something. And I found that I wouldn't give myself that time to have my mind wandering. And over the last few years, I've really tried to nourish that and being kind to myself, saying, no, you don't always need to be doing something. It's okay to have that downtime and reflection time and time to go for a walk and things like that. And I've actually found the benefits there of really being much more clear and intentional and more productive with the use of my time when I have the time, rather than working 10 hours and just scattered all over the place. Have you found that as well?
Yes, absolutely. I think so much of it has to do with our own framing and maybe like a societal view of what pausing is. Because even in how you're describing, right, it's as if like I'm busy doing things, and it's like if I slow down or if I pause, then it's almost like is there something like inefficient there, right? And
Something wrong with me,
recognize
lazy, guilt.
right, exactly, right. Like am I not being productive enough? Am I not being efficient enough? Am I not being active enough? Whereas if we actually reframe the the mindful pause, the act of introspecting, the act of being thoughtful in our planning as a source of efficiency or productivity, or a precursor to the action that follows to be worthwhile and meaningful, then we're perhaps associating more value with it that will encourage more people to do it.
Yeah.
Right. It's not about being lazy or just kind of taking downtime, right? Like, so I even think about this when it comes to like social engagements. You know, there's so many people that feel guilt going out for dinner with their friends or going on a reunion trip with other moms because maybe it's taking them away from their children. And yet the understanding of the benefit of human connection and that social engagement and that rejuvenation that comes from it, and how actually going on that dinner or going on that trip might actually help you show up as a happier and more patient parent at home. It actually is all serving the same end goal. It's still serving that value you hold in caring for your children and being the best parent you can be. But sometimes knowing that just kind of having the foot on the accelerator the whole time, always being on the move, always doing the work, might not always be the best way of serving that end goal. And sometimes it's taking the pause, or it's taking that trip, it's prioritizing what might feel like an indulgence, but recognizing that that is actually a source of re-energy that only better serves the value that you're holding.
Yeah, it's like self-care. Like I think for me, over the course of I've run this podcast for over a decade, which is because it's been my journey of growth. But that self-care time, like my time that I protect quite well, is my morning time. You know, from 5 a.m. to 8 a.m., 3 hours, and it seems like such an indulgence, really, and almost wasteful. But it's so important for my overall well-being. So it's important to protect that. Question I wanted to ask you about intentionality that we didn't really go into much, and perhaps you go more into this in your book, is values, understanding your values. Do you talk about that a lot?
Yeah. So, the chapter on exploration is all around defining your North Star.
Right.
And, your North Star is ultimately around unpacking your values and
Yeah.
your priorities and what it is that's, guiding you, or you want to be cognizant of as you're making choices, so that you can live that more aligned life. I think when people think about trying to determine what their values are, there's a few different ways of doing that.
Yeah.
One is reflecting on your own past and thinking about what are regrets that you do hold, right? What are choices that you do wish you had made differently? And what can be learned from your past about where misalignment lived?
Yeah.
And what does that tell you about your values and what
It's really good. Yeah.
what you would have done differently, right? And then so that's more about looking inward in the past. Then there's also looking outward around you. So as you observe your friends, as you observe peers, colleagues, whatever it might be, what is your feeling about the choices that they make tell you about yourself?
Yeah.
Right? In what situations are people's actions or behaviors or choices feeling aligned with like your way of thinking or your way of doing things, because that means there's like a shared sort of value system on that front.
Yeah.
And where does it feel off? Where does it feel like, oh, I really wish they hadn't done that, or I wish they hadn't treated that person that way, or this is not what I would want my child to do, or my partner, how I would want them to behave, right? Like just almost doing that analysis. It's not a question of judgment of the other person necessarily, because everyone's sort of, I mean, unless it's like really bad, right? Like when it comes to our friends, like people might just have different shades of values in different ways, and to each their own. But to the extent it helps you understand what's important to you, and what choices feel like the right fit for you. But all of these things, they don't just require the time and space to think about them, but they also require this additional level that's more metacognition. And that's thinking about what you're thinking about, right? So it's not just that, like, okay, I'm carving out time to think about my past decisions and what choices I wish I had made differently. But then it's also thinking about, how does that thought process make me feel? Where do I feel good about what I'm analyzing? Where do I feel bad about what I'm analyzing? And so there's almost these like multiple layers of thinking that are occurring. And so you can think about it as almost observing yourself as a scientist, where you're not just going through the thought process, but you're now actually stepping out of yourself and looking at yourself as if you were a scientist, analyzing, okay, what is this person thinking? And now how are they feeling about those thoughts? Then what is that telling them about what they care about what, should guide them, or what has guided them, what they would want to guide them going forward. So it's
quite confronting,
it's
right?
a multi-layer process.
You could see yourself pull back and look at yourself and go, who is this person?
Yeah. And how do I feel about that person?
Yeah. I think that's what puts all the people off this self-exploration and awareness, is that fear of uncovering something that's uncomfortable.
And that's very understandable. I think the part that is hopefully empowering about it, though, is that you can then control how you show up going forward.
And that's what it's all about. I think if you look at the life you've been given and the blessing that we've had of this life, it makes sense to be really intentional with the use of it.
Yeah.
And it'd be a shame to live any other way. I love this framework. Sorry, you go.
No, I was just, I can't remember the full quote, but it's the notion that, the story's not over. Right? Like whatever fear one is having about confronting something in their past, or being honest with themselves about what's holding them back in the present. Yes, that might be scary, and it is a hard process to go through, but as bad as it might feel in this moment, it's remembering that the story is not over, and that we're each empowered and have the agency to write the story from here on out.
Yeah.
And at least try to help shape it to being what is something we'd be more proud of.
These are your chapters till today, but you've got chapters more to write, and you can decide on how you want to write them. Yeah.
Yeah.
With regards to your framework, are there any questions that you would have liked me to ask that maybe I've missed about something important about the framework that you'd like to talk on? We've covered a lot.
Yeah, no, I think we've covered a lot. I think, the way we've talked about it is exactly that, like as a framework, as these 5 phases, and we talked about each phase. But at the most fundamental level, the path of least regret is really a mindset. It's really just this philosophy of living life in this resilient and intentional way, where we recognize that we can't prevent the hard thing that has happened or is happening to us. But as we think about how we move forward, we have the choice to move forward in a way that aligns with our values. And even if someone never reads the book, never fully grasps the 5 phases and all the science that supports it or any of that stuff, but they make decisions in their life as simple as like, do I go to this party this weekend, or as meta as like, do I change my career or the city that I'm living in? If they're asking themselves, well, what's my path of least regret? And they're going through that thought process that unpacks for them in terms of what's important to them, what their values are, what is the regret they can most live with. I think they're going to already lead a more intentional and thoughtful life that hopefully has a lot more peace of mind on the other side of it.
Yeah, it's a simple question that we can ask about those decisions, isn't it? What's the path of least regret? Yeah. I love it. I love your work. Beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing. Where can people best reach you and find out more about your work?
Yeah, so my website is my name, parulsomani.com, and there's a lot on there around the work I do as a speaker, as an author. The book, The Path of Least Regret itself, is available all major online retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, and whatnot. It's available in hardcover, in ebook, and in self-narrated audiobook. So that can definitely be found. And then also I'm on social, LinkedIn, Instagram, for anyone who's looking to dive deeper into this work, with insights around intentional living, decision-making, etc. You can follow on social, and also through my website, join my mailing list for newsletter updates as well. Amazing.
Love your work. Thank you for coming on the show. Guys, the links will be in the show notes at thehiddenwhy.com. You can check it all out there. So yeah, appreciate your time. And until next time, guys, peace, passion, and purpose. See you soon. Okay, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for tuning in this week to this interview. I hope you enjoyed the conversation we had. Make sure you check it out at thehiddenwhy.com for all the show notes and links to our guest. And if you have any comments, any suggestions for the show, please make sure you reach out as well. Also, would like to just ask a favor. If you do like what you're listening to, if you love what you're hearing, make sure you subscribe. Whether you're listening to this on iTunes, wherever it might be, subscribe to the podcast so you can stay up to date with all the latest episodes and some exciting changes happening this year at The Hidden Why, including the launch of our new website, which will be updated very soon. So watch this space for that, guys. And once again, live more fully, have more meaning, find more joy. We'll see you around the next interview.